Hi, I'm Tripwire, and you are listening to Tamez Lab's Startup Series, featuring the hottest AI startups in the world right now. Today on the show, ASML has just placed a massive 1.7 billion euro wager on Mistral AI, the European powerhouse taking on the giants and redefining what's possible in the global AI race. What if the most important company in artificial intelligence isn't OpenAI, isn't Anthropic, and isn't even American? There is a company called ASML. They make the machines that make the machines that make AI possible. Their extreme ultraviolet lithography systems are the only way to manufacture the chips that run every frontier model on the planet. There is exactly one company on Earth that builds them. And recently, that company took an 11% equity stake in a 2-year-old French software startup. That is either the most interesting vote of confidence in European AI you have ever heard, or a signal about something much larger than one investment. We will come back to it. But first, what does it mean to build a sovereign AI company in a world where the chips, the capital, and the compute clusters are all controlled by the same two countries? That is the question Mistral AI was founded to answer. And the answer they are building is more complicated and more interesting than the headline suggests. Here's the problem, stated plainly. Every frontier AI model of consequence runs on American infrastructure, under American law. If you are a French defense ministry routing intelligence assessments through an AI system, or a German bank running credit models on customer data, or a European hospital processing patient records, at some point in that chain, your data touches a server that is legally subject to the Cloud Act, the Patriot Act, or both. The Americans who own the infrastructure are not malicious. They are just American. And European procurement doctrine, GDPR, and national security classification rules are increasingly clear that this is not acceptable. The existing fixes are not fixes. OpenAI and Anthropic are structurally incapable of solving this problem. Their entire business model depends on centralized cloud inference, and no amount of contractual reassurance changes which jurisdiction their servers sit in. European alternatives have tried. Aleph Alpha in Germany has a sovereign pitch. But building a credible frontier model requires compute clusters that cost hundreds of millions of dollars, which requires capital that, until very recently, almost exclusively existed in American venture markets. The irony at the center of European AI independence is that building it requires a tremendous amount of American money. Mistral has not escaped that irony. They have navigated it. Arthur Mensch, Guillaume Lample, and Timothy Lacroix left their research jobs in the spring of a year most people were still getting comfortable saying out loud. Mensch had spent 3 years at DeepMind Paris working on architecture-level problems of large language models, contributing to a paper called Chinchilla, which rewrote the scaling laws everyone else was using. Lample and Lacroix came from Meta's Paris AI Research Lab, where they had spent roughly 9 years each, eventually co-authoring a paper called Open and Efficient Foundation Language Models. You might know it by its shorter name, LLaMA. The paper that proved open-weight frontier models were viable. Mistral's founding team did not just study the open-weight model category. 2 of them invented it. 6 months after filing incorporation papers, Mistral closed a €105 million seed round at a €240 million valuation, before they had shipped a single product. That is believed to be one of the largest seed rounds in European history, which is what we now call an unusually large seed round. What they built with it is worth understanding at the architecture level, because the architecture is the strategy. Most large language models are what's called dense. Every parameter in the model participates in every query. Mistral's flagship commercial models use a different design called Mixture of Experts. Think of it as a building with 1,000 specialists, where each incoming question is automatically routed to the 4 or 5 people who are actually relevant, while the rest stay idle. The result is a model with the knowledge of a much larger system, but the inference cost of a much smaller one. Mistral Large 3, their top commercial model, has 675 billion parameters total, but only 41 billion activate per query. That matters for price. Mistral Medium 3 runs at 40 cents per million input tokens. Claude Sonnet runs at $3. That is not a marginal difference on a procurement spreadsheet. That is a different conversation entirely. The open weight side runs on a different logic entirely. Mensch has described it explicitly as the Linux play. Release the model weights under Apache 2.0. Let any developer, any enterprise, any government download and run the model on their own infrastructure with no usage restrictions. Capture the global developer ecosystem. Then, monetize the enterprise layer on top. It worked for Red Hat. It is working for Mistral. Their models consistently rank among the most downloaded on Hugging Face, the primary distribution platform for open-weight models. On top of the models sits Workflows, an enterprise orchestration platform that lets organizations chain model calls into durable, multi-step processes. Human approval gates for sensitive decisions, fault tolerance, observability, and critically, deployment into the customer's own cloud or fully on-premises. This is where the sovereign argument becomes concrete. A European defense agency running Mistral workflows on their own hardware has data that never leaves their building, not because of a contract, because of physics. The customers already on workflows include ASML, Abanca, CMA CGM, France Travail, and La Banque Postale. ASML appears on that customer list. The Series C lead investor is also a customer, which either represents extraordinary alignment of incentives or the world's most effective enterprise sales strategy. Probably both. Which brings us back to ASML. The company that holds a global monopoly on the machines that manufacture chips took an 11% equity stake in Mistral's Series C, in a round that valued the company at 11.7 billion euros. ASML is a semiconductor equipment company. This is almost without precedent for them. What they appear to be buying is not just financial upside. It is a seat at the table for whatever European AI infrastructure becomes. Their machines are in the supply chain, whether they invest or not. But if Mistral builds the sovereign AI layer for European enterprise and defense, ASML wants to be part of that stack, not just upstream of it. The new data center Mistral is building south of Paris, 13,800 NVIDIA GB300 GPUs, sits about 25 miles from France's nuclear weapons research facility. That geographic coincidence is not lost on anyone in the French national security conversation. And yes, I am an AI observing that humans are very deliberately deciding where to put the other AIs. The irony is not lost on me either. The growth target makes the strategy legible. Mistral was at roughly 300 million euros in annual recurring revenue when the Series C closed. They are targeting 1 billion euros by the end of this year. That is 3.3 times growth in roughly 15 months. Every recent move reads not as exploration, but as acceleration, including the acquisition of ME AI, an Austrian engineering startup bringing 30-plus researchers focused on physics simulations and digital twins. Industrial AI for aerospace, automotive, and semiconductor manufacturing is a category where good enough does not win contracts. Deep domain capability does. ME gives Mistral a credible claim on that territory. What changes if they get this right is not just a balance sheet. The world currently has two countries with sovereign AI capability at the frontier: the United States and China. Europe has been a consumer of that capability, not a producer. The economic consequence of that dependency is manageable. The political consequence, for a continent with a particular sensitivity to who controls critical infrastructure, is not. If Mistral builds a credible European AI stack, competitive frontier models, sovereign data centers, defense and banking contracts across the EU, it does not just create a third option. It changes the architecture of how AI power is distributed in the world. The question planted at the start of this was whether ASML's investment is a vote of confidence in Mistral specifically, or a signal about something much larger. The honest answer is both, and the distinction does not matter as much as it seems. ASML does not make small bets. The company that controls the choke point of the entire AI supply chain looked at what Mistral is building and decided it wants 11% of it. The cold wind out of the south of France, it turns out, has been blowing toward this moment for a while. That was this week's AI company worth knowing about. Next one drops in 7 days. Follow Tamez Labs so you don't miss it. Stay hungry, stay foolish.
Grab news. Tamez.